Hello, and welcome to Asia Society's Own Voices virtual reading room. We are delighted that you are joining us today for a very special reading of Laxmi's Mooch. Laxmi's Mooch explores questions about difference, identity, and body positivity. Our featured author today, Shelly Anand, will provide a reading followed by a discussion along with the illustrator of the book, Nabi H. We hope you enjoy.
Laxmi's Mooch by Shelly Anand, illustrated by Nabi H. Hi, I'm Laxmi. Come here, closer. You see that? That's my mooch. What's a mooch, you ask? These little hairs above my lip. It's okay, you can look. I never really thought about my mooch until the other day when my friends and I were playing farm animals at recess. Zoe was a horse, Noah was a cow, and Zoe said, "Laxmi, you're a cat, okay?" "I want to be a chicken," I said. "But you're the perfect cat. You have these little hairs on your lip like cat whiskers," said Zoe. "I do?" I asked. "Meow," said Noah. "Yeah, you have a little mustache like my dad." My cheeks grew as hot as a steaming bowl of Mummy's aloo gobi. I went to the bathroom after recess and looked in the mirror. Zoe was right. I did look like a cat with small black whiskers. I sat at my desk with my hand over my mouth so no one could see my mooch. Everywhere I walked, I thought I heard kids whisper, "Meow, meow, meow." The whole day, I kept noticing hair all over my body, on my arms and knuckles and legs, even in the space between my eyebrows. When I got home that afternoon, Mummy asked, "How was school, beta?" "Well, Zoe said I'd make a good cat," I said. "Aw, you're my little Billy," she said. "No, Mummy, she was calling me Harry." "Huh? I thought we named you Laxmi," said Papa, looking up from the roti he was making on the stove. "No, look, I'm hairy. I have hair all over my body. I have a mustache." "Huh, I also have a mooch," said Mummy. "But Mummy, I thought mooche were just for boys, like Papa." "Nahi, you know, we come from a long line of women with mooche," said Mummy. "We do? Like who?" "From Mughal empresses and stately ranis to village girls and city girls, even your nani and cousin Radha. Everyone has a mooch, really. But I also have hair on my arms and legs. I have hair all over." Mummy shrugged. "To kya? So what? Hair is just for your head." Mummy smiled. "Nee, beta, we have hair everywhere." "But why?" "It protects you and keeps you warm. Just feel it, so nice and soft," she said. "But look at this hair between my eyebrows." "Yes, it's lovely, just like Frida Kahlo," said Papa. "Who?" I asked. "Frida Kahlo. She was a famous artist from Mexico." "Oh, I think he kind of looks like a caterpillar," I said. "Caterpillars are the coolest, beta. They build cocoons and become butterflies," said Papa. "First I'm a Billy and now I'm a butterfly?" I asked. That night, I dreamed about Royal Bengal tigers prowling through the Sundarbans. Their long black whiskers danced in the hot breeze, and butterflies flew behind them, fluttering around their long tails. The next day at recess, Zoe wanted to play farm animals again. "Let's play jungle animals instead." "I'm a tiger with my long, silky mooch," I said. "A long, silky what?" said Zoe. "Mooch, it's Hindi for mustache." "Well, what should I be?" asked Zoe. I walked up to Zoe and I got really close. I saw tiny blonde hairs on her lip. Sure enough, she had a mooch too. "You should be a lion with your shiny blonde whiskers," I whispered. "I don't have whiskers," said Zoe. "Do too," I said. We both ran to the bathroom and looked in the mirror. "I don't see anything," Zoe said. Moving closer, I told her. She leaned in so close that her nose left a little smudge on the glass. "Oh," she said. And then slowly she smiled. When we came out of the bathroom, Noah was waiting for us. "Hey, what about me? Do I have a mooch?" he asked. Zoe and I both looked, but we didn't see a single hair above his lip. "Nope," said Zoe. "Yeah, I don't see anything, Noah, but maybe we can draw one on for you until your real one comes in," I said. "Okay," agreed Noah. A small group of the other kids in our class crowded around as I carefully drew a mooch on Noah's lip. "Me next," said Savvy. "Me too, please," after Savvy asked Timmy. They lined up behind Noah for my world-class mooches. "I don't need one. I already have some hair there," Lucha smiled proudly. "So do I," cheered Arazu. Pretty soon, everyone was showing off their mooches, real and drawn. "So, will you show me yours?"
So, Shelly and Nabi, it's great to have you both with us here today. And Shelly, thank you for the wonderful reading. And Nabi, thank you for the beautiful illustrations. So I thought we'd take a little time to kind of have a little bit of discussion around the story, around the illustrations, and your motivations around why you wrote this book, and some major themes that, we've extracted from the story. So, shall we get started?
Sure, thanks for having us.
Sure. Yep. So I'll get started. Shelly, this first question is for you. Can you talk a little bit about your inspiration for writing Laxmi's Mooch? And why did you choose to write a story about gender norms related to body hair?
Sure. So the inspiration for the book came to me actually when I was on maternity leave with my daughter. She was my second child, and I have a really great, diverse community of friends where I live in Decatur, Georgia. And a good friend of mine who's also South Asian, she's Pakistani, had a daughter that was in kindergarten. And we are always talking about our experiences as, diaspora desis and raising children and what we want to keep culturally and what we want to do differently and things like that. And so she called me because her daughter had been teased in kindergarten for having a mustache. And of course, that was very triggering for both of us because it just brought back all of these memories around, the first time I was teased for having a mooch and for having hairy arms, and all of these things. And I just looked down at my daughter and I was like, it has to be different for this next generation of girls. And I just started reflecting on, some of the experiences I went through growing up as the daughter of, immigrants from India, and the culture here in the United States and what it means to be brown and be hairier than white folks, but also what we have in our own South Asian culture around hair and beauty standards and some of the messages that young girls get about having to be clean, clean arms, clean face, and cleanliness being associated with hairlessness. And so that's really what kind of inspired me. And I was like, what's a tool I can create or a story I can create that has a different outcome than a lot of the outcomes that we experienced as brown hairy girls, which is our mothers, putting bleach on us sometimes. When I was a kid, my mom, would put bleach on my mooch, or going and getting threading and all of that. And I was teased I think I was in 5th grade, so I was a little older. And so that was the other part of it, that a lot of the issues that we got teased or bullied about, for whatever reason, this new generation of children, our children, all of those things are happening to them at a much younger age. And that's why, I wanted a picture book for a girl or boy who's teased about something about themselves, whether it's hairiness or whatever, and how to come out of it without feeling the need I have to change something about myself. And so that was really how the inspiration for the story started. It was just kind of this like cathartic healing journey for me, from writing it to getting it published. And, during a pandemic when none of us are waxing and shaving and all these things, it's been quite a a body positivity, hair positivity journey for me as well.
Yeah, that's just such a wonderful story because it's really, a great, it's a wonderful story, but I just love how you've incorporated your own experience, your friend's experience, and really kind of looked at your daughters and thought, you know what, this is something that I want to do for them. And it's such a beautiful story. It is something that I think many women who grew up here in the United States or grew up in the West can relate to. And it is something that gives a lot of South Asian women, and I think women with darker hair, something to really kind of, look at and say, hey, look, this is a story that's very similar to what I experienced. It may be something that you may experience as a young child. And, we can read the story together and kind of learn about how to deal with this. One thing about the book that I really loved is the integration of the mom and the dad and how they were kind of bringing in examples, for example, the Frida Kahlo example with the eyebrows, and just really bringing in, listen, hair is something that you should embrace. It's part of who you are, and you're not the only one. There are other people in the world. There are other really important people or people that you may admire that have gone through the same thing or also have hair. So I thought that was just really a great connection in the book. Thank you for that. So I have another question for you, Shelly. So Laxmi and her family shift between English and Hindi, often within the same sentence to communicate, showing their agility between multiple languages, which I thought was really just wonderful. So can you talk a little bit about why you chose to include this concept of translanguaging in your book?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that's what it sounds like in my household. That's what it sounded like when I was growing up, whether, as a multilingual, bilingual household. A lot of children who have parents that speak another language, will often respond in English, and that's how they learn. But I wanted the book and the communication with the parents to be reflective at what it sounds like in our homes, whether you're speaking Hindi or Spanish or Tamil or whatever, that, this is what it sounds like in our house. And I really was writing, the book ultimately is for everyone, but it's a special book for brown girls by a brown girl. And so it's a book for us by us, and so it's meant for, those children of immigrants or those folks from the diaspora. And I wanted it to be familiar and comforting, similar to what, my mom would say to me when I was upset, or my grandmother would say to me, like, "To kya? So what? Why do you care what other people think?" So I really thought of the language of, comfort and things that my own family would say to me as a child, or what I would say to my own children. And language is very important to me because, like a lot of children of immigrants, my parents immigrated in the 70s and 80s. And back then, a lot of immigrant parents that spoke other languages were told not to teach their children those languages for fear that the children wouldn't learn English. And that was actually part of this like anti-bilingualism movement in response to the Cuban refugee crisis. And it's pretty racist. And so language is something that's really, really important to me. I'm a worker rights attorney. I speak Spanish fluently. And unfortunately, I feel unfortunate that my Hindi isn't as good as my Spanish. So language is something that I really care about. And I wanted that reflected in the book, that the whole picture of what a girl like Laxmi, what her world looks like at school and what her world looks like at home. And I wanted it to be a celebration of that.
Great, wonderful. At Asia Society, particularly in the Center for Global Education, we really promote, students and young people learning new languages. We have a very robust program around Mandarin languages, and translanguaging is something that we see often also with very many heritage speakers. So what you're talking about in terms of immigrant families who came here in the 70s and 80s, and their children may not be as fluent in their home language. Sometimes we continue to find that here as well. And I don't think it's necessarily because, the families, don't want to have their children learn, but now these children are our children. So we are, same with me. I grew up Gujarati. My Gujarati is not that great. Like I can understand everything, but I don't speak it as fluently as I wish I could. And now I can't
teach my children as I would. And so I think giving parents, stories that show this translanguage kind of concept to say, you don't have to speak so fluently, but you can, pull in vocabulary words that you can pull in concepts that and mix it in with English, and that is also a wonderful way to expose your child to the language. So
absolutely. Yeah. I definitely learned speaking Hindi, like how people speak in like Delhi, where my family's from, like English. And even my Hindi is not purely Hindi because my parents are, Punjabi refugees from partition. So we got some Punjabi in there, we got some Farsi in there. It's a whole mix, which is why the other part of it, Nabi and I had this whole conversation on the cover pages that we really wanted to show this isn't just Hindi, it's Urdu as well, and being inclusive of that whole false dichotomy, communal dichotomy of Hindi and Urdu, that we're speaking the same language. So there was a lot of intentionality that we put into the book.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. So Nabi, I have a question for you, a couple of questions for you. Laxmi's Mooch includes beautiful illustrations, as everyone who just viewed the reading saw. Can you tell us a little bit about your artistic choices and the inspiration for the illustrations?
So I'm not very good at talking about my own art, but I'll try my best.
Okay.
A lot of like my color choices come from Indian folk art. Like I wanted to show the vibrance that we use, and also like the miniature paintings. And so a lot of it is like a very matte finish in the book. And also like it accentuates the hair details, I think, because if I start putting in a lot of shading and a lot of like different like complex lighting, then it'll probably like take away from just the darkness of the hair and like the little like strand details on the face that I put in.
Great.
So it was mainly that, and and the folk art part really lent itself to some of the more like abstract parts of the illustration, like the spread where there are all the like the family members, the princesses, the ranis, etc., and also the spread with the tigers and the Sundarbans. So like I wanted to show something that's like, it's a little cartoony for kids to be able to access and to access easily, but also with the folk art influence.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that. And, as we all know, a picture book or a children's book is nothing without the illustration. So I think the illustrations are just absolutely beautiful. One of my favorites is I think it's towards the end of the book where the teacher even, colors in a mooch for herself. And the diversity of all the students in the class is just, beautiful. You don't see that often in many books. So I really love that. And I do see your use of color and the vibrance of it all is exactly, I think you captured exactly, the South Asian, the use of color in South Asian culture, but also I think the choices that you made between, what students wore, depending on their racial or ethnic background, and the colors that you chose for them, I thought was very beautiful. So thank you for sharing that perspective. And just another question for you. Can you talk a little bit about your process of creating art? I know many kids love art. One thing that I see my daughter doing sometimes, she loves art as well, and she'll just go straight to choosing her color and drawing and then getting frustrated because it's not exactly what she wanted, that kind of thing. For the kids in our audience, can you talk a little bit about your process of how you get started, how you think of ideas, that kind of thing, and a little bit maybe more about how you, in your bio, you state you'd love to showcase diversity. Maybe you can talk a little bit more about that as well.
Mm-hmm. So when I start out, I don't actually go right into drawing. I look at references first. I go on like long drives and I'm like, okay, what parts of the scenery can I incorporate into these illustrations? Or I remember for Laxmi's Mooch, the playground is actually based off of a real playground that I found in the Bay Area. Like I was visiting my friend's elementary school, and I'm like, oh, this is cute. And then, like I just take pictures of things that I like to incorporate into my illustrations. And so after I'm done compiling references, I kind of just let it sit there and look at all of it. Like, I spread it all out, and I'm like, okay, like internalizing all the like aesthetics that I want to use. And then I go into the sketches, and I make them really rough at first, kind of like just stick figurey, like where everything is going to be placed first. And then I go in and I'm like, okay, I designed my characters. So I made like a character sheet for Laxmi where I think I made 3 different options for her, and then I sent that over to Shelly and to the editor and the art director, and they got back to me with which one they like the most. And then so I take those character designs and then I start like sketching them out into my compositions. And then afterwards, after some back and forth, in Kidlit, like you have to send over the sketches, and they say, like fix these parts, and then you fix them up, and then you send it over again, and then they say, oh, okay, this is good enough to go to color. And then so coloring comes last, and I really need to make color palettes like a lot of people do, like just pick all their colors for what they're going to choose throughout the book. But honestly, I just go with the feeling. Like I don't really like, I'm not like very, I wouldn't say I'm not intentional about color, because I am, but it's definitely a spur of the moment thing. Like I'm like, oh, like this part where she's dreaming, like it's going to be all dark except for the parts of her imagination that are popping up. But yeah, like I don't choose it ahead of time. It's more like I start getting a feel for it as I'm coloring. And but what I would recommend, I think, for children is that they pick their favorite, like they pick the colors ahead of time, and then they sort of like test them out on a different piece of paper before they put it onto their sketch. I think that can like, it can remove some of the anxieties of, oh, what am I going to do if I mess up on coloring? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. I've heard also from an artist that what you can do is select just 4 or 5 colors from your entire palette, and then kind of stick with that. And that can kind of give you some structure. Yeah. So that's great advice for kids. Thank you. Do you want to make a comment at all about, you're showcasing diversity and other cultures?
So it's similar to what Shelly said. Like, what I'm doing is more just accurately depicting the world around me. Like, because I grew up in the Bay Area, and that's like what I put into the book is what my classrooms look like. And so I feel like at this point, if we're ignoring, putting diversity into our books and into our stories, it's like, we're not depicting how the world actually is like, and we're showing like only one part of it. So I think putting that in is it's very important to me. And I think for children to see that, that they can also be part of a story, if that makes sense. And it gives them a sense of normalcy.
Right. Great. Thank you very much. So this next question is for both of you. And this one, can go to parents, I think, addressed to parents, is how can we practice teaching our children to be body positive? Do you have any tips for parents in our audience? Either of you can take this question.
Yeah, I mean, this is something I'm definitely thinking about a lot. Again, as a woman who's grown up in the society we've grown up in, I have a second picture book that's coming out next year with Simon & Schuster that I've co-authored with a dear friend of mine, Nomi Allenson, and it's called I Love My Body Because, and it's exactly about body positivity. And, I think we don't realize, or it's very difficult, to shelter our kids from some of the messages that we kind of put out, that society puts out: fat phobia, shadeism, colorism, whatever. Anything that, and especially in the United States, anything that is outside of what is seen as the norm, which is white, light hair, light skin, And so I think it is really important for children to be surrounded with positive images of like them being healthy and beautiful and amazing just the way they are, and being proud of themselves. And I think a lot of it starts with, for me having to practice that myself as a mother and as a woman, and me having to unlearn a lot of the things that we grew up learning. And so, a big one that we talk about in our household is like the word fat, and being fat not being pejorative and not being negative, just recognizing that every body is different, and showcasing different types of bodies and who we look at. So like I follow, there's an amazing yoga instructor in North Carolina, and she's a fat Black woman, and she's phenomenal at yoga. And like all of these myths that we get thrown at us around health and weight and all of that, really really working on unlearning and changing the way our children learn about bodies. And so I think there are a lot of really great books out there on this issue. I mean, Tyler Fetter just wrote an amazing book called Bodies Are Cool. And and I agree, bodies are cool. And talking to my kids about things that they've done that are like really amazing. Like my son, we went to like Bandelier National Park. He was 3 years old, and he climbed one of those like 50-foot ladders, to go into the caves. And so I'm like, how amazing is that? And doing things that we feel good about, eating good food, going on hikes together, and just kind of celebrating ourselves. And, my son, for example, had 2 teeth that went missing or, fell out at the same time, and he felt embarrassed. I'm like, this is the only time in your life where like you get to be this cool with like your teeth falling out and you look so cute, and it's amazing. Just, giving them positive reinforcement, but also working your hardest to be confident yourself, which is a struggle. I'm not saying I'm perfect at it, but it's a practice, and it's a muscle I'm trying to exercise more. So I guess that would be my advice to parents, is exercise that self-loving muscle, and your kids will see it.
Yeah, that's great. And I need to exercise that, definitely. Thank you. Nabi, do you have any thoughts on that? Any advice
I
for
think
parents?
mine is basically like, I don't know, like the gist of just what Shelly said. I think I don't have kids. I'm 24. But I think the most important thing is for parents to not cave when it comes to these pressures being put on their children. Like a lot of times, kids will come home and say that they're bullied about something in particular, and then the parents will kind of cave to that pressure, if that makes sense, and say, oh, like maybe you should dress like this, or you should, like you should shave your mooch, or like they kind of take those pressures from the outside, and they don't give a place indoors or like within the family for the children to be able to escape that. And so, it's like they have nowhere to turn. So I would say my biggest advice is for parents to not cave to that pressure, and to be able to teach kids to love themselves as they are, and for them to, those children to be able to take that out into the world.
Thank you. Yeah. So provide a safe space at home
Yes,
to be who they are. Yes. Love it. Thank you. And our final question for both of you. Do you have any advice about body positivity for our young audience today? Anything for our younger viewers? I know you had some tips for parents, and in there, I think, are some great messages for kids, but any final thoughts for our younger audience here today?
I've done a lot of therapy to kind of help me with my own sense of self and self-confidence. And one of the things is like how we wire our brain and the messages we tell ourselves. And so I think for kids, it's a really good habit to just be like, okay, what are 3 things that I love about my body, or that I love about myself? And maybe writing those down in a journal. I mean, there's like gratitude journals that my therapist keeps telling me to do. What are you grateful for? It can be a body positive journal where You talk about, I'm grateful that I'm, able to, take care of myself and feed myself. I'm grateful that I'm a fast runner, whatever it is. I'm grateful that I'm a good artist. Just kind of, writing those things down or thinking about them and saying them. And then you start to feel it, and that's how you kind of build confidence, or at least that's what neuroscience tells us. So I think those are really good habits that I at least want my children to practice, and that I'm trying to practice for myself as well.
Thank you for sharing. Advice like that sometimes costs $100 an hour. So thank you for sharing that with us. That's really great. Yeah, I mean, I think all parents are struggling with that, no matter what it is, having a mooch or any aspect of their body. I think, just with media images and the way in which we are taught that, taught about how we should look is going to affect every single person, regardless of what they look like. And I think it's really important for our kids just not to focus on that. I just don't want my children as well to just be focused on being upset about the way they look. I just feel like the world, there's so much, to focus on in the world, beautiful things to focus on. And if you're just so constantly upset about something about your body or the way you look, something that you can't even change most likely, or something that you should be proud of, I think that's a problem. And so I appreciate your comments on that. Nabi, anything else? Or Shelly? Go ahead.
In my case, I think like when I'm drawing these kids, like no matter how different they are, they're all like, they're so cute and lovable, and they all bring something unique to the picture. So I think what I want kids to think of in terms of themselves and the world that they're relating to is that we're all part of this big beautiful painting, and everyone brings like a unique aspect of it that just enriches it more. So I would just say, don't let anyone destroy that painting or erase out a part of it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And I want to thank both of you for joining me today for this wonderful discussion. I think body positivity and self-acceptance are just so important for our kids right now. And the more we, celebrate books like yours that talk about these issues and are open and honest about them, I think the better we are for doing it. And the more we'll be able to help our own kids and the children of today to really kind of think differently about who they are and take pride in who they are. And so I appreciate your time this morning, and we hope, Shelly, to feature your book next year when it's when it's out. I hope we can do that. And Nabi, is wonderful to speak with you as well. So take care, and we'll see you soon. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.